Hi, this is Chris Collins, and I'm going to show you how to recreate the sound of the original Blade Runner opening titles in Mixcraft 8 Pro Studio using only plugins that come bundled with Mixcraft. Now, you've probably noticed that the music playing is not the Blade Runner theme. I did this to hopefully avoid any copyright claims on this video. The main title music from the 1982 Blade Runner film can be found easily online if you want to refamiliarize yourself with it before proceeding with this video. The legendary Blade Runner soundtrack was composed in 1982 by Vangelis in his own recording studio, using a combination of synths and acoustic instruments. The soundtrack's most recognizable sounds come courtesy of the Yamaha CS80, a beast of a synth that had a very expressive sound. Mixcraft 8 Pro Studio just so happens to come bundled with a CS80 emulator called ME80. ME80 is a fabulous emulation of the famous CS80 synthesizer. Using ME80, it's possible to replicate many of the instruments used in the Blade Runner soundtrack. Here I have Mixcraft Pro Studio 8 opened with a new project, and I have some virtual instruments and audio tracks already set up. Adding ME80 to an instrument track, and then opening it up, shows the default preset is Blade Run Aftertouch. The fact that the default preset is a Blade Runner sound shows just how historically associated the synth is with the Blade Runner film. Playing a few notes sounds familiar. But there is something missing. Where is that bright filter swell? It needs to go. Sorry, that sounded more like a dying cat. Anyway, the CS80's expressiveness was due largely to its use of polyphonic aftertouch, a feature available on some keyboards that lets you control aspects of the sound by varying the amount of pressure you use when holding down a key. For the lead sound in the Blade Runner main titles, pressing into the keys of the CS80 would increase the brightness considerably. Now, ME80 does support aftertouch, and that is how you would normally achieve the filter swell, but, well, most people don't have MIDI keyboards with aftertouch capability, myself included, so we'll have to get creative and come up with a workaround. If your MIDI keyboard does support aftertouch, then you can skip these workaround steps. The first workaround is to assign a continuous MIDI controller on your keyboard, such as a mod wheel or expression pedal, to send its data as continuous controller 2. Or CC2 as it's often written. ME80 is programmed to accept CC2 in place of actual aftertouch data. Most keyboards will offer a way to change the CC number sent by your controller. If you have a MIDI breath controller, it should already be set to CC2 by default. I have just mapped my mod wheel to CC2. Here is how the Blade Run Aftertouch preset sounds now when I use it to control the brightness. Now that sounds just like the Blade Runner lead. If you are unable to change the CC number sent by your MIDI controller, another workaround would be to use a MIDI transform plugin to do the job for you. A good free option is MIDI Shapeshifter. The download link is in the description. You'll want to download the 64 or 32-bit version to match the version of Mixcraft that you're using. If you're not sure, the 32-bit version should work in either 32 or 64-bit Mixcraft. Run the file after you've downloaded it to install MIDI Shapeshifter on your computer. So, by default, a mod wheel will send CC1, which will sound like this. It gets a little brighter, but not as much as we want, so I'm going to open the instrument selector for track 1. Down here, I get the option to select another synth. We're going to search for and select MIDI Shapeshifter. And then drag that up so it appears before ME80 in this list. This is important. We want the MIDI to be transformed before it reaches ME80. Click Edit, and then we will create a custom mapping in this box here, or maping, I guess. Anyway, click the plus icon, and then we're going to change the message type to CC. For channels, we're just dealing with channel 1, so put 1 there. Parameter range, we want to do controller 1, since that's our mod wheel. Uncheck the same as input button, and then set the parameter range to 2. This will take all input for CC1 and remap it to CC2. Now my mod wheel is sending to CC2, and it sounds like this. The first thing we're going to do is try emulating that lead sound. Normally, when I try to imitate a recording, I will first find the tempo and then align the recording to the measures in Mixcraft. However, there's no discernible meter in the Blade Runner theme, so to get the timing right, we'll use a different approach. For this part, you'll need to have a recording of the Blade Runner main titles in a digital format such as MP3 or WAV, which can be purchased from your digital music store of choice. Once you have the recording, drag and drop the recording onto an audio track in Mixcraft. I'm only going to reproduce the middle part of the track, so I will trim this up to about here, around measure 33, and then drag it back. So here's the part we will be imitating mostly. Starting on measure 12 is where that main lead comes in. Now, before I can imitate the lead melody, I need to know what notes to play. I was able to figure this out by ear, and I transcribed the notes into MuseScore along with a couple of other parts as well. PDF link is below. The rhythmic values are approximate since the rhythm in the recording is very freeform. We'll ignore the other parts for now. Start by practicing playing the melody with the ME80 that you have set up. If you are using the mod wheel workaround, you will need to start each note with the mod wheel at 0 and then swell the brightness up and down after you play each note, like this. At the end of the melody, there's a high E and the note just slides down and gets quieter. To do that slide, Vangelis used the CS80's ribbon controller by dragging his finger from high to low across the ribbon. You can actually approximate this in the ME80's interface using your mouse. The only problem is you can't actually record the pitch slide this way, so we'll be using a different method to add that in later. Let's go ahead and name the ME80 track Lead, since we'll be adding more ME80 tracks later. Now, to imitate the timing of the original track, make sure the metronome is off. Pan the original recording all the way to the right, and pan the ME80 synth lead all the way to the left. This will make it easy to isolate what you are doing from the recording you're trying to imitate. You'll want to use stereo headphones for this part. Just a little test before we go any further. You should hear this piano lick only in your right speaker. The next one you should hear only in your left speaker. If you heard both examples in the center of your headphones or speakers, then you are probably listening to this using a mono speaker of some sort. If one of the examples was completely silent, then only one channel of audio is making it to your current speaker setup. If you have any of these anomalies, you might not be able to hear this next part correctly. Now, if I hit record, I can hear the original track in my right earpiece, and then I just play every note a slight bit after I hear it in the recording, perhaps about a quarter of a second later. I'm trying to be consistent with the amount of delay, so about a quarter of a second later is when I play the note from when I hear it. And then I just try and match the filter sweeps as well. So it's not perfect, but it at least enabled me to get the timing almost identical to the Vangelis original. Now I'll turn off Snap to Grid and drag the clip that I just recorded back just a little bit, trying to get it to line up with the recording. It seems pretty close. Maybe move it a bit forward. Oh, actually, I should not have done that. Let's move it back. Okay, that's better. And then I can make further edits to individual notes to get the timing even more precise. Just a little further back. That note comes in a bit too late. Etc. So skipping ahead, I've tweaked a bunch of notes here. Now I'm going to bring up the controller selector and choose channel pressure. You'll want to do CC2 if you followed my steps from earlier. I ended up mapping my mod wheel to channel pressure instead, but it'll look the same whether you use pressure or a continuous controller or whatever. So you can see the contour of my filter sweeps. Oh, there's a wrong note. You can see the filter starts opening a little too soon in this note, so I can just take a pencil tool and draw a new contour. And that's closer to the original. Etc. Just try and use your ears to make the left and right speakers match up as much as possible. Now we need to add two things to the final note, the pitch slide and the volume fade out. We will do both of these things using automation. First, let's do the pitch slide. Click the automation button for track 1, open the automation drop-down menu, and then go down to ME80 version 2. And we want to find ribbon on the list of parameters. Let's find where it starts to slide. Right about here is where the slide starts, just before measure 34. So we'll put a automation point there, and one down here. And that's sliding too fast. We're going to try and match the slope of the slide. So it'll take some trial and error. That's pretty close right there. So I think we'll go with that. Next, we need to get the volume fade out, and for this we will use clip automation. First of all, make sure volume is selected in the clip automation dropdown, and then we can add a point where we want the fade out to start, and then also the end. I'm not sure if I'm satisfied with the exact amount of volume decay, so I'm going to contour this a bit. And that matches pretty darn closely. The next thing I want to do is tweak the reverb a bit. The original Blade Runner title uses a very lush reverb, whereas the reverb we currently have in ME80 sounds rather metallic in comparison. So let's lushen things up. Is that a word? Lushen? What am I? I guess it is now. First, let's set the track 1 pan back to center and turn it back up a bit. Then I'm going to create a send track on which to host the reverb. Click the Send Tracks FX button, and let's search for Acoustica Pro Studio Reverb. Click Edit, and select the Cathedral preset, which will give us a nice, lush reverb to start with. Now, I've already played around with this, and I found a few tweaks to this reverb that make it sound a little bit closer to what we're looking for. So if you'll follow with me here, I'll show you what I did. First, bring the pre-delay up to about halfway, then pull the liveness down a bit. Let's turn the early gain all the way down. And we want to keep more of the highs in the sound, so increase the high cut frequency and drop the bass boost down. And then, probably the most important part of having a reverb on a send channel is to set the mix all the way to wet. You don't want any of the dry sound being duplicated through the send track. We'll close that, and let's give the send track a name so we know it's for reverb. And then scroll back up to track 1, and in the automation dropdown, select the reverb send. And let's increase it to about 68. And let's hear what that sounds like. So that's nice and lush. For comparison, here's with the reverb off. And on again. So, big difference. The reverb is a huge part of that spacey sound that Vangelis was able to achieve. We could also use a little EQ to brighten up the sound. My tool of choice for this is the Pultronic Tube EQ. Click the blue effects button to bring up the master effects list. Plugins in this list will affect the entire project. By the way, these disabled effects on my master track are just things I was using for making this video, so you can ignore those. Click to select an effect, and we'll search for Pultronic. With just Pultronic's default preset, the brightness of the lead synth sounds much closer to the original recording. Here's with it off. When it's enabled, it just cuts through with those high mids a little bit more. Be aware that as you continue to make comparisons between the original recording and what you're doing, the original recording is also playing through the EQ, so it's not going to be a fair comparison. If you want to avoid that, you could set the main title's audio track to play through its own output bus. So let's talk about some of the other instruments. There are a lot of other things going on in this recording. I'm not going to try to emulate all of them because we'd be here all day, but I at least want to recreate a few more parts. So far I've identified low strings on an E octave, and along with those strings is a low rumbling noise. Both of these sounds continue throughout the whole section. We also get some mid-range chords played with what sounds like a filtered saw pad, along with high strings that come in on an E octave. You can hear them together in this part. Or at least I can. I don't know how good your ears are. But the good news is I've notated them out for you. Here's the notation file that I showed earlier. And you can see the strings and the saw pad parts written out. First we will record the low strings, and for the low string sound we will use another instrument track here. Open the instrument selector, and then browse the preset categories to Synth Pad Bright, and then select My God. Here's what this instrument sounds like. It's a pretty big sound, but we're going to modify it a bit here to make it a bit less epic. Click Show Details, if the details aren't already showing, of course. Uncheck the first instrument to disable it. You can hear it thins the sound just a bit. And then we're going to change the second instrument to Ambient Wind, which is preset 00. Now it sounds more like straight strings, but you still get some ambient sound along with it. And here's what the low strings will sound like. I'm going to record that low octave, but just for a bit. And then we can just drag it out to the desired length in the piano roll view. That's not quite long enough. A little bit further. And maybe not that long. All right, that seems like a good length. Now, to get that accompanying low rumble sound, click on the Library tab. Click this little world icon here, which is for the internet. And we are going to search freesound.org for a sound called Space Rumble with an underscore between the two words. And there it is, and it sounds like this. So, let's scroll down to an audio track here and just drag that to the empty audio track. We'll rename it here, Space Rumble. Now, this isn't quite long enough as it stands. You can see it tails off about 2/3 of the way through the audio clip. So the easy solution to this is to make a copy of the clip and trim it up so that it's strong at both the beginning and the end of the span. Drag that back and it will automatically crossfade as the clips overlap. As you can hear, the crossfade is imperceptible. It's very smooth. We'll paste that a second time. And that looks like it's plenty long, so let's hear what that sounds like with the strings and the rumble together. And the lead. Let's adjust these levels a bit too. Not bad, although I might want to tweak that lead a little bit more. I don't like that second note swell very much. So we'll just draw a new one. See how that works. Smooth that out a bit. Much better. The next instrument we will add will be the saw pad. To create the saw pad chords, we will use a different synth. On the next unused instrument track, open the instrument selection window, choose VSTI Instruments, and the Messiah plugin. We're going to set the preset to CS80 Deep Felt. I'll just type it in. Click Edit. And just playing a few notes, you can kind of hear this is close. But there's a few things we should tweak to make it just a little bit closer to the sound in the recording. First of all, the filter is too prominent, that filter envelope where it causes the wah wah. So we'll slow that down by adjusting the envelope. That sounds a little bit more smooth. And then I don't like the note attack being so short. So we're going to lengthen that as well. This will make it more pad-like. Bring both the decay and the release up. Much better. I'm going to just pull the filter envelope amount down a bit. When I play this preset, the harder I hit the keys, the brighter and louder the sound is. This will come in handy because the first chords using the saw pad are very quiet, but later they become louder and brighter. So when I record these chords, I will play lightly at first and then increase my note velocity around measure 6. You can see how the chords line up with the lead melody notes, so you can use that as a guide while recording. So skipping ahead a bit, I've recorded the clip, and I've also added some clip automation to control the volume a bit more. I'm going to go ahead and send to the reverb channel with this instrument as well. And let's hear what this sounds like together. Alright, so we're getting closer. The next thing I'll add is the high strings. I'll open the instrument selector for the next track here and go to Strings Ensemble. Select Hall Strings Slow. Referring again to my notation file, you can see the strings part, the upper E octave in the upper staff there. And you can see that starts along with that second melody phrase in the lead synth. Then it moves up to F sharp and back down. You can see which melody notes that aligns with. So, should be fairly easy to record that in. Once again, I'm going to skip ahead and you can see I've got the clip recorded here. I'm going to play this a bit so we can get the appropriate level for the strings that we just added. sounds good, but I think we need more rumble. Regarding the extra instrument parts, there are a few more layers that I'm going to go over briefly, just in case you'd like to add them in using your own ear and the techniques that I've shown you in this video. There are actually a few more layers of CS80 on some low notes, kind of right before the lead melody comes in. You can hear occasional filter swells on the low E's as well as a B flat. So those notes show up right here, or here. Yeah, so you can hear those low E's, whatever. So yeah, the notes are low E, oops, low E, the B flat, etc. And you can just kind of add those in by ear if you'd like. I don't want to make this video any longer though. Also, there are synth wind-like effects and the ethnic sounding plucked string flourishes as well if you want to try and figure those out. There's lots of layers to it, but I'll leave that to you to figure out. Now I'm going to skip ahead to my finished project here. I did add a few of those extra CS80 parts I was telling you about, but I did leave out the plucked string, flourish, and wind sounds. Here you can see those low swelling notes from the ME80 that I added. I also spent more time tweaking the main lead and adjusted the volume of the parts a bit. Here's what my final result sounds like. And that, my friends, is how you imitate the Blade Runner main titles. I hope you found this video useful, and as fun as it is to imitate such an amazing film score, you can also use these techniques to create your own Blade Runner style music. The music you hear playing right now is actually a track that I created a few years ago, kind of emulating that Blade Runner sound. Anyway, I hope you guys all have a really fun time playing around with this fantastic software. These old retro synths had such a wonderful sound to them, and it's so cool that in 2017 we can just emulate hardware that was at one time unattainable for most people. So enjoy and go out and make some music.